to talk to you today about the tech talent gap. And whilst it's not directly Agile related, it is something that I think resonates with a lot of the organisations in the room at the moment. And this is actually an adaptation of a talk we gave a couple of weeks ago at London Tech Week. We were invited to come and speak. We took our robots along, which, if anyone remembers our sponsor talk last year, you guys were helping us code our robots live. And you can see them over at our stand in the exhibition hall. But we talked there a little bit about the tech talent gap, and that's kind of the talk I wanted to share with you today, some of the data, and then how we're working to kind of solve some of that in Cornwall. So as Gary so kindly said, my name is Nikki Davies. I'm one of the directors here at Tech Cornwall, formerly known, like I said this morning, as Software Cornwall. And for most of you, thankfully, you all know where Cornwall is. When I did this at London Tech Week, I had a show of hands and half the room had no idea where we are. Hilariously, we were also exhibiting with the Cornish Space Cluster. And when we booked the stand, we're like, yeah, we've got this collaboration, this is going to be amazing, like Cornwall are going to represent. They put us on a country pavilion. So we were there with Cyprus and the Ukraine and the Pakistan Technology Club. And we kind of were like, well, why are we on a country pavilion? And it turned out that when we booked it, the person who was organising the room didn't know where Cornwall was and thought it was a country. So thankfully, you guys know where we are today. You've made your way here, so thank you. But most people do know Cornwall for its beautiful beaches, its amazing world-class surf at very small times of the year, and of course the Cornish pasty, which if you were around last night, you had sampled the best. But what most of you may not know, or some of you probably do, because you do come back regularly, which is awesome, is that Cornwall is home to one of the world's largest Earth stations, which is Goonhilly, and this one behind me is known as Arthur. And Arthur did the first transatlantic TV stream back in 1962. So it's really there as part of the infrastructure, and Goonhilly today serves as part of the all-important space cluster in Cornwall, but actually it's still part of the global infrastructure for space data, and it's a really, really important part of space infrastructure, and it's privately owned. The space industry in the UK employs about 45,000 people. It's worth £16.4 billion annually. And what you may not know is that Cornwall has about 130 companies all working in space and space data within the county itself. So it's a massive, not only is it obviously a growth area, but for Cornwall it's a huge part of our economy as well. And we work really, really closely with the amazing team at the Space Cluster to kind of support that, and obviously teaming up with things like London Tech Week. We also run an event called Slushed. Now, if you have been through the startup world, then you may have heard of the event Slush in Helsinki. We found it a couple of years ago, but this event has been around 25 years. And it started up much like Tech Cornwall did 10 years ago. They started about 15 years ago as a small meetup for startups looking for investment in Helsinki in Finland. And now it's one of the biggest tech startup conferences in Europe. It's held in Helsinki every November. There's about 4 foot of snow on the ground, and they go into this amazing warehouse and completely transform it. If you've never been, it's probably the most, outside of this one, best conference I think I've ever been to. The production value of what they bring and the connectivity with investors, VCs, and startups is second to none. So if you are in the kind of startup space, then I would highly recommend it. What Slush do is they want to also support other communities, much like theirs began, with running slushed events. And this is something they started doing about 4 or 5 years ago, much like TED do TEDx events, Slush do slushed events, to help places support their local startup community. So we went through a competitive pitch competition and hilariously didn't get it. Liverpool got it. But Holly and I, not taking no for an answer, about 2 years ago said, well, do you think Liverpool would like to team up with us and maybe we could bring it to the UK for the very first time in a Reading and Leeds festival style thing? And Johnny at Liverpool went, hell yeah, that sounds great. And that's what we did last year. And I'm pleased to say we're bringing it back again this year. So I'll come on to a little bit more about that later. You guys obviously know of Agile on the Beach because you're here. And obviously this is one of the biggest Agile conferences in the UK and something we're really proud of and is really part of the infrastructure. And Cornwall's also home to the UK's first spaceport. So we were chosen out of multiple sites in the UK because we've actually got a really long runway. So we're not launching rockets, we're sending things into space via aircraft. So we need a really, really long runway. So our runway at Newquay is about 10,000 feet, which is the same length as Stansted Airport. And the good thing about Cornwall is because our airport is in the arse end of nowhere, it's very rural and therefore it's actually very safe to go and launch things because most of the aircraft takes off over the sea. So it makes it a really compelling place with the support of Goonhilly. We also have an amazing national drone hub in Cornwall, which again is not something many people know about. There's a dedicated airspace of around 5,500 square meters of airspace, and that's between 0 and 55,000 feet for a dedicated drone space. And to give you some context, if you've ever jumped out of a plane, you're jumping out about 10,000 feet, and most commercial airlines fly between 25 and 35,000 feet. It's quite a lot of airspace. So that's all taking place in Cornwall as well. So Tech Cornwall has been around for about 10 years. We celebrated our anniversary with a rebrand. Our community had changed, and it was time for us to evolve with it. We know that software companies have moved on. We know that most companies may not identify as a tech company, but actually tech underpins a lot of what they do. Some of the companies you may work with could be retailers, they could be local government, they could be anything, but actually it's a lot of what underpins it is technology, and behind that is technologists. And so it's important for us to kind of recognise that and evolve as well. And rebranding to Tech Cornwall allows us to open our community, connect with more organisations that are here in Cornwall, and help plug the tech talent gap, which ultimately is what we do best. We're a non-profit organisation. There's about 100 member companies within our membership. That represents around 3,000 people. So it's quite big and it's growing. But what we're here to do is to kind of close the tech talent gap. We host meetups and events. We host conferences like this. This helps us carry on doing what we're doing. And I'm going to get onto our education and youth programme, because arguably that's the most important bit of what we do. But firstly, a little bit about the tech talent gap itself. And I thought it a really good idea to talk about what it actually is. Now, it's probably not news to you that there is a tech talent gap in the UK and probably across the world as well, and certainly Europe. Cornwall's always had a tech talent gap. This is why Tech Cornwall was founded 10 years ago. You've probably noticed on your way here, there's not many people passing the door in Cornwall. If you pass the door, you end up in the sea. So actually attracting talent is really challenging, despite this being such an amazing place to live with a great work-life balance. So the founders of Tech Cornwall 10 years ago decided actually it was going to be really important to take a grassroots approach to solving this problem, and got together and launched this membership organisation supported by local industry that could actually go out and help young people get really inspired, show them that there's opportunities to work in technology on their doorstep, knowing that actually technology was going to be a way to help pay bigger wages and recruit internally. Now, you'll be pleased to know this is the most text-heavy slide in my deck. I'm not going to make you read anything, but this is data from it was Oxford Learning Centre, who summarised a lot of the tech talent gap data in 2023. And I wanted to pick out a couple of key points. So the very top one, an estimated 20% of the workforce in the UK will be significantly underskilled for their jobs by 2030. This could amount to around 6.5 million people. It's quite a lot of people. Then right at the very bottom, data from the Office of National Statistics revealed that the number of job vacancies between February and April 2022 rose to a record high of 1.29 million people. Now, that's really alarming, but there's also a lot of opportunity within that. So it's how do we develop the skills to fill those job roles? You might think, well, actually, this conflicts with all the information I'm hearing about massive redundancies in big tech. Well, actually, McKinsey did a big research study last year that found that whilst tech companies in the US were laying off a lot of people, 80% of the staff that were laid off found jobs within 3 months of leaving those companies. And the number of job vacancies still outweighed the number of layoffs. So we know there's opportunity. We know that tech is growing at an alarming rate, and we know that we don't have the skills necessarily today to fill that. So how do we go about responding to this? One of the other key points I want to pick out this is everyone talks about digital skills, but there's actually very little definition into what digital skills actually are. So I did a little bit more digging to find some more data, and McKinsey again came to my rescue, and they did a little bit of a study and looked at the key skills for data specifically between 2018 and 2022 to see actually what were the requirements on job descriptions that were being picked out, and what was the differentiator between those 4 years. Now, you'll see from this, Apache Hadoop right at the very top, within 4 years, the number of job descriptions requesting that as a skill halved within 4 years. And then right at the bottom, Apache Kafka, that was 1% of job applications in 2018, is now 16%. And you see that data all the way through, and this is just around sort of data science job applications. So this kind of spans across all jobs as well. And that is kind of what we're dealing with. That there indicates, okay, well, how do we skill up a workforce when the rate of innovation is moving at such a rapid rate? That's really difficult. And of course, our systems, universities, colleges, schools, cannot adapt as quickly as perhaps industry to fulfill a lot of these jobs. And yet those key skills are really, really important. We still need people with computer science degrees and backgrounds that have the core fundamentals to be able to come into industry and solve some of these problems. So I went back to the research, had another look at McKinsey, and in the same report, they do make some recommendations about actually what skills are we asking for within technologists. McKinsey found that ability and willingness to learn was actually the key skill that they needed in a person with technical skills to be able to come to the workforce. Now, a lot of the time, we label this as soft skills, and actually, I take a Brené Brown approach and label them as power skills. It's really important that ability and willingness to learn, this came out as the number one thing of all the McKinsey data that was required within an individual. We know, with talking to our 100 members throughout the last 10 years, and they're telling us that we can teach somebody to code, but we can't teach somebody to turn up to work on time, to work well with other people, to communicate effectively, to learn Agile methodologies, to learn how to do all these principles. We can teach somebody that, but what we need is aptitude and problem-solving ability. So how, when we do onboarding and recruitment, do we test for those skills as well as those technical coding abilities and software engineering? And then we know by delivering the programs we've delivered in our career switch programs and a lot of the training that we've done over the last 5 to 6 years, and working with our partners like Tech Women CIC, who are a local amazing organisation helping to get more women into tech, that actually confidence and adaptability are the key skills that individuals are coming out with in these sorts of training programs that then help them take them into the workforce. So if we can create an environment where individuals have got confidence and they feel ready, even if they don't, most of them come up feeling like an imposter, saying, I don't belong in tech. I myself have gone through this. And actually tech, yes, it needs software developers, but it also needs creative people, designers, great problem solvers, thinkers, project managers, agile scrum masters, everybody. It needs people who are great with money, people who are great with people. All these skills are also required in tech. And so we have to get this sort of balance between, okay, how do we find someone who can problem solve and then create a learning environment within a business so that we can teach those skills that are constantly evolving and changing. One thing they did say was soft skills are difficult to build, replicate, and automate, yet they can have significant impact on the ability of tech employees to integrate, develop, perform, and learn. One of the other bits in the same research said that most companies allow between 0 and 24 hours a year in training and development, but if they up that number to around 75 hours per year for an individual, then their productivity rate goes up by about 79%. That's less than a week. That's less than a week of an individual's time to do some learning on the job that actually could have a massive impact on company bottom line. So how do we start with this? How do we close it? You might be wondering what Cornwall is doing trying to solve this. But like I said earlier, we've kind of always had this gap. So I wanted to share with you some of our experiences of how we're starting to close this gap and how we've been working with companies locally to try and solve some of these problems. So we've come up with 4 kind of key areas. Our first one, like I talked about earlier, is arguably the most important thing we do, and yet it's the one thing that we cannot get funded, and this is our youth programme. So if you know much about Tech Cornwall, previously Software Cornwall, you will know that we're in almost every primary and secondary school in Cornwall. We are doing assemblies, career carousels, careers fairs, we're doing workshops, we're taking industry leaders and software engineers, everybody out to schools to meet young people to get them pumped about tech. And to tee up with that, we then provide a work experience programme 3 times a year throughout our school holidays called Mission to Mars, which I'm on the little side of Mission to Mars, which you may recognise our Mars rover robots, which we took to London Tech Week, and several people asked me how was their journey back from Mars. And the programme creates an environment where young people get to experience what it's like to work in a tech company. They work through Agile principles and Agile methodologies. They run Scrum, they have Agile games, they have to manage a budget, they have to buy time on the robot to be able to test their code. We get them coding on Python, the robot's run by an Arduino, we get them working together in a team, and at the end they have to pitch their company that they've come up with, their values and everything, to investors to win time, and ultimately get the robot to run its way through a series of commands, and so that as it drives, it can't bump into a wall, it can't drop into a crater, and certain lights have to go on and off at the same time. We know, because we've been doing this now for about 10 years, that the young people who were doing it in 2014, 2015 are now taking up roles in tech jobs, in tech companies locally. And they are now coming back to volunteer with us on our youth program to help that next generation. And this cycle has continued. Every time we do sort of one of these events, somebody pops up to me and says, oh, my son or daughter did that. And we went to one a few weeks ago. I said, oh, I did your program and it changed my life. I'm now doing a computer science degree. And we really believe that you can't be what you can't see. So we try and bring people in the industry and connect them with young people to show them there are really cool jobs out there, to challenge some stereotypes, but also get them really excited and show the applications of technology. We're going to expand some of our work experience programs. We're going to do more around environmental, some around space as well, because these are topics that young people really care about and they're fun, and we can make them fun and engaging. But we can't do that with help and support. So we support all that by doing lots of other things. And one of these is our Tech Cornwall Academy. So this is a learning academy. We provide digital skills and training to adults working in industry already, or those thinking of entering the industry for the first time, or perhaps career switching from another role. With our Career Pathways program, we piloted a program at the end of last year, and it was around, we called it Gateway to Tech, and it was a pilot to see if we could get adults with those power skills I mentioned earlier to help them career switch into tech by running an 8-week program with a supportive cohort-driven community to help them find roles in tech jobs. And I'm pleased to say we had a 35% success rate in placing those adults with tech companies locally through that one program, and that's something we're expanding now. There's also somebody in the room floating around at the back of the room. There he is, Ryan, who emailed us last week to say that he had just got a new job with thanks to our program. So can we just give a massive round of applause to Ryan? Congratulations. So we know this works. This is something we're going to keep building on. And we've had several success stories in that as well. So we're trying to sort of expand on those. And with our Tech Cornwall Connected, we run events like this. We run meetups for the community. We try and provide spaces and places for the tech community to meet informally or at conferences around a theme, just to get those, much like we're doing today, get those minds together and help each other grow and solve problems as well. The last 2 days, I think there's probably a few people in the room that did this. One example is we took them through an accredited Agile course. So they were coming to Agile on the beach. They wanted to get an accreditation in Scrum fundamentals, and they went on a 2-day course leading up to this event. And we had a 100% pass rate yesterday for the individuals who took part in that course as well. And we're building a pathway so that they can do a fundamentals course and then lead all the way up to Agile practitioner. And this is with an AXIN accredited course. So these are just some of the things that we're trying to do to actually help bridge education industry with individuals and the youth program as well. And by creating that whole environment with community, with events like this around specific niche topics, actually we find that this is working, but it requires a really collaborative effort and for walls to be pulled down between education and industry. But it does work. So when we started our education outreach back in 2017, for our Mission to Mars program, we've had about 600 students now go through this. We've got 25 more coming in next month. And the students basically meet other students that have gone through it. And we're trying to expand on this as well. If this is something you think you want to get behind and support us with, or give us some ideas about other things that we can be doing with the youth program, we're talking to some cybersecurity experts now to talk about ethical hacking, and maybe there's something around that, then we'd really love to talk to you. We're really open and we're flexible and we're agile and we can spin things up really quickly. Our key thing is like, how do we get young people engaged and get them into tech? So if you've got experience of this, I would really love to talk to you. And the Tech Cornwall team have got a stand in the exhibition hall as well. So please come and grab Rob. He's our education outreach lead. Is Rob in the room? No, he's still at the stand. Through our youth program, where we go out to schools, we've reached around 21,000 kids so far. And this is only growing. We are getting knocks at our door all the time for schools wanting some support because they're finding that their geography teachers are also teaching IT. They are overstretched. And we want to be able to do more for them, but like I said, it's unfunded. But the schools are reaching out to us all the time. Yesterday, we ran the first ever Agile on the Beach youth program. So if you saw any of our social posts, you'd have seen that we had 100 young people in the room yesterday, aged between 16 and 19, who were starting to use Agile in their schoolwork or thinking about their next career options. And we're thinking of how they can use Agile methodologies to back some of their decisions and help them become more effective, maybe if they're going into A-levels or further education. And it was a really inspiring day. And one of the sessions we did was, what do they think the future of the workforce is going to be like? and what would they like it to be like? We wanted to hear from the generation themselves about what they thought. And so what we're going to produce is some research out of that, using all the feedback that those young people share with us. And it was fascinating. It was things like, yeah, we want to knock off at 5 o'clock or get paid for what we're doing. Like, they really value their time. And a lot of it was so refreshing. Like, why have we been doing all this all the time? They had some brilliant ideas. And so it was a privilege to bring them in the room and actually hear from them first. So we want to create more opportunities like that. PwC sponsored that for us. So they backed that day, and they were in the room as well to support those young people in finding their career paths and how they could use Agile to become effective in their work. Something else we do, because the tech talent gap kind of also requires specialist knowledge, is we do events like this. So 12 years ago, and Tech Cornwall kind of founded around the same time unofficially, Agile in Cornwall was only used by a handful of companies. And so directors got together and said, well, actually, how can we create a bit of a meetup? So bring some Agile minds into the same room and share knowledge and understand how Agile can make our software companies more efficient. And this is what it's turned into. We couldn't do this without the support of this community and the people that come back time and time again and the people that go and tell their friends. So we're so grateful to all of you for being here today, for helping us to do that, because everything you're doing helps us then go out to the industry and support young people doing it. So we are a non-profit. Everything goes back into supporting our youth programme, and you've been a major part of that. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. We really appreciate it. I talked a little about Slushed earlier. So the next Slushed event, if you are in the startup scene, takes place on the 12th of September. It's going to be in Newquay. Last year we did it in Sailors Nightclub, which if anyone has been to Cornwall many moons ago, like I have, and partied in Sailors, I can assure you they've had a big refurb, and I did mop the floor the day before everybody turned up. So it wasn't sticky like most memories. But we brought a slush vibe. We had a pitch competition. We had about 40 applicants applied to pitch. We had 10 through on the day, and we had one winner, who's a local young woman who developed an app to help parents who have got children with ADHD go through day-to-day tasks like getting dressed, brushing their teeth. And she's now had some grant funding. She's had some introductions to investors and lots of support from the local business community, thanks to her time at Slushed. We had about 63% of people in the room last year were either founders, budding entrepreneurs, investors, or VCs. Slush themselves, that number is about 70%. So we're gunning for about 70% this year. We've switched venues. We're heading to the Lighthouse Cinema in Newquay because we're going to do multiple tracks. The venue is more accessible, slightly less sticky, but there's also popcorn and slushies. So we were fully on brand with our slush requirements. So if you are around, tickets are on sale now. You can visit startupcornwall.co.uk, and there's exhibition opportunities as well. So if you help startups develop their MVP, then it's the sort of place where if you want to get in front of them, that's a really, really good opportunity to do so. I wanted to share, because I know you've probably all seen it, but running behind me at the moment is last year's highlights video from Agile on the Beach. There'll be another one this year as well. But this is still one of the biggest Agile meetups in the UK, and it's something we're really, really proud of. But we want to keep building on it, and we don't necessarily want to go bigger with the attendee numbers because we want people to be able to connect and really create a community. But we're always interested in feedback and how we can keep evolving it. What else do you want to hear? You know, we get a huge number of speaker submissions. Like Steve said this morning, we had 401 speaker applications this year for 50 speaker slots. That's amazing. And we did wonder whether we needed to be 3 days, but that's an awful lot of time out of your diaries, especially with travel either side. So, you know, our ears are open. We're a tiny team. I think there's 8 of us and a speaker committee. We can be really agile and nimble, but we can't do it without your feedback. So make sure you're using those QR codes at the end of the speaker talks to give us feedback on those. And also just either tell us or, you know, I think your lanyard will send you to a feedback form as well. Please tell us, because we will make assumptions otherwise, and we want to make sure we get it right. Like I said, that number is now 35% of our career switchers, and Ryan is in the room and can vouch for that. This is something that the next piece of this is, how do we get companies to successfully onboard junior staff and get them billable as soon as possible? So we've got a few companies in Cornwall that are doing this really successfully, and that's one of the things we hear is companies, small and big, want to support new talent into the ecosystem, but they can't necessarily afford the time of losing a senior person to bring on that person. So the next piece of our plan is, okay, how do we almost teach that? And a lot of what we're hearing is some of it's business model structure, but actually how can we go, okay, well, here's 4 amazing companies that bring on junior talent really successfully. They get them up to speed and billable very quickly. How can we now teach other companies in Cornwall to do that? But we're open to sharing this knowledge and we're open to hearing about it as well. Because whilst it benefits Cornwall, we can almost pilot it here because we've got community, but actually we want to be able to roll this out and help other clusters do the same thing. So we've taken around 1,000 people through our Tech Academy so far. That's only going to grow. We're trying to really build on this Tech Academy. We've got loads of courses available. Some of the people that are speaking at our Agile on the Beach actually come and deliver workshops for our youth programme and for learners as well. So if that's something you think you can help with, talk to Kaylee. She is in a red T-shirt, I think, today, or Holly, who's down here as well. Or to be honest, Gary, anybody. Talk to any of the Tech Cornwall team because we have a roster of speakers and workshop facilitators who help us deliver training. We want to make sure we bring those skills in and keep creating that knowledge bank of information. So keep upskilling people and help plug that tech talent gap. So in summary, the key points, and actually I stole these from, there was an event in February, and it was a business science conference in Brussels, and it was called Hot Talent, How to Train for Future Tech Innovators. I think CERN were on there were some government officials on there, and these were their points. This is what the panelists, these are the points the panelists were saying, okay, this is how we need to solve the tech talent gap. And everything resonates with what McKinsey is saying, what we found from our research, and what we're doing on a day-to-day. And they said, foster interdisciplinary education. We have to pull the walls down between institutions, schools, and industry. One almost can't work in the tech talent without the other. So it's about how do we support universities, support schools, support young people finding their way into tech and sharing that knowledge and then making sure that they're ready for industry or industry helping to influence curriculum and actually getting those individuals out there. It's a real challenge. It is hard to do. We are at an advantage because Cornwall's quite small, but we have piloted a lot and it has worked. So one can't really work without the other. So you have to have collaboration over competition. Oops. The second one was enhance collaboration amongst industry and academia, like I've just said. Promote entrepreneurial education. This is why we brought Slush. Some of the people in the room yesterday, they're sort of 16, 17. One of the questions you asked was like, well, do you want to work from everyone? And some of them were like, no, I want to be my own boss. And so it's like, okay, well, if you could create an amazing work culture, what might that look like? What might your products be? Like, getting people to think entrepreneurially, if that is even a word, about what they might want to do and the problems they're solving. We're a room full of problem solvers. That's what we do. So actually, how can we teach those skills and create that entrepreneurial environment? Invest in research infrastructure. This is really challenging and not necessarily down to the clusters, but trying to, if you can't necessarily take on junior staff, what you might be able to do is help your staff go out and mentor other staff as well. Give them mentoring days, make those part of those 75 hours. Implement systematic change across the innovation landscape and ensure a unified approach to talent and technological development.
I'm so sorry.
My time is up.
I've got to do the James Corden thing.
That's fine. So yeah, come and visit us in the expo hall. We're really open doors, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into the tech talent gap and how we're solving it. But thank you so much.
Thank you.